And this is actually, I think, the third time I've run this, or maybe the fourth. And I built it in response to the fact that I think New Year's resolutions kind of suck. Like they've never worked for me, and it's I feel like it's a professional liability if you don't have an opinion on New Year's resolutions as a coach. It's kind of like our moment in the year, right? We have to have something to say, and I kind of have a hard take on it of like they don't work, and I got into like why I think they don't work and what I think works better. So that's kind of the byproduct of that is this resolutions reimagined session. And that was just a reminder to me to record it, which I'm glad I remembered before I needed the slide. But I really want to talk about like why goal setting and goal management need some fresh takes and what some different ways of actually developing accountability are that tend to work and be stickier. And I've done this with a lot of clients and actually seen it happen where people are able to shift their relationship to their motivation by reframing some of their goals.
Mhm.
And it also works with other people. Like if you're leading a team or if you're working in an organization or even in like a relationship, right? Like how do you sustain the momentum that you need over longer periods of time, um, and achieve that progress, celebrate it, and then build on it. And I really want to hear from you, Will, like on kind of some of these real life scenarios or application as we go. Like pause me, let's get into it and drill down a little bit deeper. And there's kind of two layers here. One is about goal architecture and motivation. And then the other part is a little bit more like practical and strategic around prioritization and like how do you actually get shit done when you need to.
Mm.
And I kind of want to hear from like you on what you think the challenge you have with healthy productivity or motivation is. Like, why did you hop on the call and what's something that's standing in the way for you right now?
Sure. Um, so I have been able to be productive in a few things, and I don't really know why I've been able to sustain some things and not others. The thing I have been able to sustain is meditating every day. I've been able to do that for 160 days. Maybe it's
Wow.
161 now. I'm so proud of that.
Excellent.
Um, And then the other thing, like working out every day, even though it would be the same amount of time. I mean, my exercise bike is right here next to my meditation cushion, but not doing it, not doing it.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm just curious if there's some unconscious things going on that I may be able to figure out and get more shit done.
Yeah. So like what's maybe keeping you on track with one thing but not another? Kind of an
Yeah.
interesting way to frame it. Cool. Well,
Hmm.
as we go through and you have if there's no light bulbs go off, let me know, or we can dig deeper into that. But I want to talk about motivation and like where it comes from and how we create more of it. And this might be interesting for you to look at like what's keeping you sustained in your motivation for for meditation and what might be missing with the exercise piece. But there's sort of like the reverse food pyramid here in terms of our levels of motivation. So this isn't like you should have more of the bottom and less of the top. It's actually just ordered in layers of energy. And so the like lowest level of motivation, the most basic form is punishment and relief from punishment. So think about like fear-based stuff, right? Like I either want to avoid a bad outcome or I don't like the thing that's about to happen, right? It's all fear, guilt, shame, anger. We do this because we don't want to get fired. We do it because we don't want to go to jail. We do it because X or Y, right? These are the things that are very effective, right? That don't get me wrong, this stuff works really well. But the challenge with this is it's not sustainable. It kind of is hard to live in that cortisol burning, high intensity environment where you're just stressed out all the time trying to avoid a negative outcome. And it's actually really challenging to build your life around this form of motivation because you're framing everything in terms of what you don't want, which is pretty
Uh,
counterproductive in terms of thinking of it like instead of moving towards a goal, you're moving away from a negative outcome. And so, how could you reverse that to think about like, what do I want to move towards instead of what do I want to avoid? So, most of us live in this level at like the animalistic, most basic level. We don't want something bad to happen. So, we work to avoid it. But ultimately, if that's the only gas in the tank, it tends to stress us out and burn us out.
sure.
And then the second level up is external reward, which is a little bit higher up the ladder. But this has the challenge of being subject to what's called hedonic adaptation, which basically just means you can get used to anything, positive or negative. This happened to me recently. I bought a new car like in October, and it's finally starting to just feel like my car now. You know, like it was cool for a few months, and now I'm just like, this is the thing that I use to get from A to B. And so the external reward can drive us, but unless we're able to constantly achieve more money, more status, more recognition, more, this starts to be like a little bit of a hamster wheel too.
Mm.
And we start to feel kind of insatiable here, right? Like we're not satisfied. We have and I do this exercise with clients where I get them to look at like a snapshot of where they are in their life and compare it to an earlier period where like the life you have today is the life that you maybe dreamed of having in your best case scenario at a certain point. But now that you have it, you're just kind of like, oh, but I'm not, I want more, right? So there's this lack of satisfaction that comes from just basically adapting to our circumstances. And so if we're building all of our motivation from this place of seeking these external things, we're always going to be looking for that next level to continue to sustain that sense of satisfaction, and it won't last.
Mm.
So these two layers at the bottom, very widely available, very accessible, and very effective, but ultimately not renewable. The third level starts to get into these higher orders of motivation. And this intrinsic reward is something that we do because it matters to us, right? We feel purposeful in it. We find growth in it. It's this quest of seeking mastery. So maybe I imagine for you with the meditation, it's like maybe you've gotten some of the benefits from it already, like it's the health benefits or whatever, but now you're seeking this sense of like, oh, but there's more here. Maybe I'm doing it because I care about it, or I want to find out what this deeper place in myself is that I can get to through this work. So now you have an intrinsic reward, and it doesn't matter if anybody else sees it or not. It's really about you and what your internal practice is in relationship to that goal. But there's higher orders than that.
Mm.
You can get next into play, which is this sense of like enjoyment, excitement, or exploration that comes from pursuing a goal, right? And so maybe then the motivation for meditation, a bit of a tongue twister,
Mhm.
uh, it's like it goes beyond that sense of purpose and growth to like, I actually want to do this. I feel playful. I feel excited. I feel curious, right? Like curiosity is a big feature of this layer of motivation where you're kind of like, ooh, what if, like you're in that more expansive place in relationship to the pursuit. You're feeling like really called to it, and you're suddenly making more time for it, or maybe other things are falling to the wayside because your energy is naturally starting to flow towards it at this point. It's becoming more of what you want to do and less what you feel like you have to do. And then finally, the fifth layer here is love, which is this sense of devotion or higher calling, or like you hear it said in sports, like for the love of the game. You know what I mean? Like people who do
Yep.
this because it's part of the spiritual word for it is dharma, right? It's part of their calling, their purpose, and their sense of why they're on this earth and what their main storyline of their life is, right? Is related to this objective or this pursuit. And when you're operating from this level, all the other things tend to happen. You tend to, get the rewards, intrinsic and external. You tend to feel excitement and joy,
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
but but you're really living in that place of like, I'm doing it because it's about something bigger than me. And this is my part in this larger process that I want to contribute to. And so when you're operating from that place, it's not even about sustaining motivation anymore. It's about making as much energy available in your life as you can to pour it into that calling. And they tend to come from two places. So these lower order levels of motivation come from the head. These are very logic and reason based. Like, I don't want a bad thing to happen, or I want a good thing to happen. So let me work as hard as I can to produce those outcomes. But the upper levels tend to be more heart based, where this is something
Mm.
that like has to do with these deeper layers of emotion and our sense of self and well being. And what do we want for ourselves in the world? What do we want to contribute to it? There's a tool called Ikigai that I used a lot for a long time. This like alignment of purpose in our life, and this is a very
Ooh.
heart-based process of looking at like what does the world need, what could I be paid for, what am I good at, what am I called to do. That's this kind of this map of things that we can do. They're very heart-based when we look at it that way, and heart motivation is fundamentally renewable. Head motivation is fundamentally non-renewable in the sense that these upper three layers, the intrinsic reward, play, and love, kind of tend to generate a positive feedback loop. Like we want to
Hmm.
do more of it
Hmm.
as we get it. And then the lower layers of external reward and punishment and relief tend to be non-renewable, meaning like,
Sure.
we need more of it to sustain doing it.
Yes,
Um,
I think I've also heard this framed as limitless and unlimited.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's like we're going to talk about uh finite and infinite games later in the session.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about there. Yeah, so you're onto it here. The upper ones are more of an infinite game.
Mm.
The lower orders tend to be more finite game oriented here. And so we can pivot a little bit to goal architecture, like how we design goals. But before we do, want to get any reflections or reactions on this piece? Anything you wanted to ask a question about before we continue on?
Sure. Yeah, the play and love, I'm so curious of how you move from playing into love, uh, because um, like I value so much curiosity, and I know that like when you can get curious about something, it's just unlimited. Like a kid will be infinitely curious about something,
Yeah.
and getting into that seat, just I get excited about that.
Yeah, and I think the following that natural curiosity to larger and larger ways of creating impact is one path to doing that. I'm sure there's many,
Hmm.
but that's what I think of. And you could almost think of it like as in terms of how big are you framing the question, right? So like, what could I
Yeah,
do for my team? What could I do for my community? What could I do for my industry? What could I do for the world? Right? It's like suddenly you start to grow the scope of the play and the impact that the energy you want to give to that process can have. And I think that's when you start to connect it to these higher orders of meaning and these bigger senses of like, what am I meant for? How can I accomplish, a contribution that matters? And that's where we maybe get into that sense of love or higher calling in that work. It's just by kind of expanding the frame of the question and following the lead of that curiosity to bigger and bigger stages and chances to contribute. Yeah, it's a beautiful question. So, okay, that's motivation. Like, what are we fueling our tank with? Where are we drawing our inspiration? But then how do we actually design processes that are effective to utilize that? Because maybe you're one of the lucky ones and you're in the sense of play and excitement and you have things you want to do. But then, like, what do you actually need to do to organize yourself to be effective in achieving some of that? And so I think we actually might have talked about this in one of our sessions, like felt like another lifetime ago. But looking
yeah,
at the difference of like between goals and objectives. And I learned this from Emmanuel Acho. He used to be a quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles and now has a great podcast called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. And he was talking to Adam Grant about this. And I was like, this is such a cool idea. Everybody should know about it. So
yes,
a goal is something that's specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time bound, right? So lose 15 pounds by April 30th. Very clear cut. You'll know if you do it or you didn't. But then an objective is actually open ended and more of like a horizon or a direction of travel instead of a destination. And so this in this example, be in the best shape of my life this year. And the way Emmanuel framed it was that goals are fundamentally limited by the mindset we have when we set the goal. And an objective leaves the possibility open ended for who we might become along the path of achievement, which might actually make it like farther down the line than we thought we could. So, like, we say 15 pounds on January 1st. And then, like, once we get to 12 pounds and we kind of stop trying as hard, because like, oh, we're almost
yeah,
there versus like best shape of my life means like, oh man, I'm already at 12 pounds. I bet I could get to 20 by, July. Like it just like there's more of the scope is more open-ended. And you're often not really understanding what you're capable of when you begin a process because you're limited by some of the doubt that you have around your capability. And so you tend
sure.
to sandbag your actual potential by setting a goal instead of an objective. And I thought that was actually a really insightful way to think about how do we plan for and measure our success? Do we give ourselves these hard targets that are very pass fail, very binary? Or do we
Mhm.
give ourselves these sort of open ended directions of travel that have lots of opportunities to develop and celebrate along the way, but aren't kind of focused on a fixed endpoint? Because that also limits us to that extrinsic reward, right? We're
Yeah,
like, okay, cool, I got the 15 pounds, I feel great. Now what? Versus like this ongoing relationship to transform your health and be in the best shape, you start getting more into those intrinsic and higher orders of motivation. But there's kind of a trick here too that you actually need goals to achieve objectives. So
uh,
like you can't abandon goals entirely. And so maybe you'd set an open-ended objective like be in the best shape of my life, But along the way, that means I'm going to be losing at least 3 pounds a month, for the first quarter of the year, right? So you want to set targets that make that objective achievable, but don't basically make the end result the goal. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I appreciate you saying that you don't replace goals with objectives.
No.
It's right.
But you use goals to move towards an objective.
Yep.
But I think when I talk to most people about this, they're really just like, oh, I'm just going to design a goal, a fixed endpoint, and then do a bunch of smaller goals to get me to that bigger goal. So it's like a little like Russian nesting doll of goals. It's like little goals leading up to big goals, which works, but it ultimately, I think, robs you of a deeper sense of satisfaction and a deeper possibility here of like where could you really get if you had an open-ended horizon. And you alluded to this, right? I see your smile, the finite versus infinite games. And how do you view your life is basically the question here. Do you view your world around you as like, you know, this outcome oriented win or lose, like dog eat dog, or like, it's a zero sum game, right? So I have to win so that, somebody else loses so I can win, right? There's a very
Mhm.
closed mind thinking here. This is like common mindset in sales, unfortunately, and it's not very customer centric, but like, you're thinking, oh, well, I got to win this business so my competitor doesn't get it, versus like, oh, I got to be like the best strategic partner possible for these clients. And then like people would naturally want to work with you in that case. So this idea of like, do you see your life as a game of chess? It's very in those lower orders of motivation where you're sort of focused on outcomes. It's very like reward centric, avoiding negative outcomes, and is
Mhm.
powerful, but ultimately wears you out. Versus an infinite game is more open ended. And the point of an infinite game is to actually continue the game. And so it's about expansion. It's about growing. It's about creating wider and wider circles of impact. And an example for this is like improv or dance, right? You don't dance to reach a certain point in the room. You want to dance so that you can keep dancing. You find a dance partner, so you guys you move together and enjoy the flow of the moment. And so this is a much more interesting way to frame a process of growth or an objective is to like think about, am I viewing my New Year's resolutions as this win or lose thing, or is it more of an infinite game? Is it more of a place of expansion and possibility?
Yes.
And along the way, when we're kind of keeping ourselves moving towards some of this stuff, like how are we filling our time? This is from Oliver Berkman's book, 4,000 Weeks, which I recommend if yeah, you've read that.
Oh yeah. I read it and I wrote a summary of every page. I
Awful, awful
love that
book.
book.
Awful book for if you want to like, sleep well at night, because 4,000 weeks is how
Yeah.
long you have to live if you get to be like 82, I think. So, what are you doing with your time? And a lot of us are living like T-like activity to T-like activity, which is something that's done for the sake of something else. So it's
Mhm.
very future oriented and it takes us towards those purposes and objectives, which means it's really helpful. Like we need this stuff and, save for retirement and plan for tomorrow and do this thing. I often find myself in the present, like thanking past me for doing something to help me today, right? So we don't want to not do this, but it actually tends to speed us up and get us to a place where what my dad calls like living in fast forward. So
Mhm.
we're just trying to get through everything to get to the next thing. Versus
Yeah.
an AT-like activity is something that's done for the sake of itself. It's really for its own enjoyment. It's not future oriented, and it really takes us down into the present. And I hear this a lot with people I coach where they're like, oh, well, I'm really excited to take my vacation so I can come back refreshed to work again. And I'm like, no, please just go enjoy your time. Like, don't do it for the sake of your productivity. Do it because it's pleasurable and wonderful for its own sake. And so these are the things that really slow us down and invite us to just like stay here. And this could be things like taking a walk without your phone or like reading a novel for pleasure or listening to a piece of music or dancing, right? You don't listen to a song to get to the end of the song. You want to be in that. And so, what are the things you're doing to actually balance telic versus atelic activities? Because if you're living in fast forward all the time, you tend to burn out and you tend to feel like your whole life is just rushing by you. Whereas something that really brings in this intentional presence and connection to the here and now through atelic activities kind of fills our cup while we're on that objective process and we're moving towards these bigger goals. Because we can't just be living for the future all the time. We have to have things that matter to us here and now. And that's really helping make that motivation and progress more sustainable.
Mhm. In progress. Yes, I think you're speaking to, I mean, coming from goals and objectives as well, is we're moving towards like accepting that our lives, we're a work in progress, uh, and that work in progress is, I don't know, good enough.
Yeah. Can you actually enjoy that progress, that work, that process instead of feeling like you have to get to this point of completion before you can actually enjoy anything about it? So these are just kind of the three models we talked about, like using goals to get to objectives instead of only setting goals, reframing win-lose zero-sum scenarios to kind of infinite games that are more expansion oriented and designed to keep momentum going, and interspersing our telic activities that are focused on something else with things that are actually valuable and beneficial on their own and things that are done for the sake of themselves. And when we layer these two pieces together, these like sources of motivation and where is our motivation coming from with like how are we actually designing our goals and progressing through time, there's a really a lot of opportunity for profound shift in how we like both drive the ship that we're on and the things that are fueling it. You know, what are the process and the inputs look like can all change in response to some of these components. And so when you look at like something like your challenge around exercise, right? Like what's keeping you off the bike but on the meditation mat? Does anything pop out here?
Um, yeah. So, going back to even the very first topic, it was the bottom of the pyramid that I'm avoiding, fear of uh I don't know, like kidney disease or something that
Yeah.
is frequent among people. And that it's like, well, if I bike this much, if I cross off this many days, then I'm safe. I'm
Yeah.
good. Uh
Yeah.
and and I'm not that makes it not super enjoyable. It's almost like I have to look at it and go, I like pre-shame myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So your initial input, your starting motivation was like, I don't want to be sick, so I'm gonna exercise more. Right.
Yeah,
So they're like, yeah, it's avoid and it's an outcome you want to avoid. So you're trying to generate motivation from that.
right. And it going back to Oliver Berkman's book, I remember, and the audiobook is great because he's a nice English guy, right?
Yeah.
And and when he's talking about the telic versus atelic activities, he's like, you can't be the best hiker. Like you just
Right.
hike because.
I mean, Strava ruined all that for us, but yeah, exactly. You can just go out and walk. It's fine. But yeah, that's an interesting, like, yeah, that source of motivation is maybe part of what's making that challenging.
Mhm.
And so I want to talk about a little bit on prioritization and taking action. And this is like kind of getting into the tactical stuff of like, all right, cool. If we're really stuck, if we're not moving forward towards some of these goals and objectives, like we found our intrinsic motivation. Maybe we're not trying to avoid being sick. Maybe we'll want to be really healthy or we want to like find some playful thing in that, relationship to exercise that unlocks more motivation for us. But then like, how do we actually get ourselves to do it? Because I think this is something I struggle with a lot. And I mean, I haven't met anybody who's like really awesome at this stuff yet. So these are some tools that can help move the needle. And this is from James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits. If you have more than two priorities, you have no priorities. The definition of a priority is it's got to be the thing at the top. So how wide are you making the top of your to-do list where it's like all number one, 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 right? And it just kind of dilutes your energy. It's better to give, if you have 100% to give, giving 50% to two things versus 10% to 10 things, you feel a lot more progress. So here's this model called deciding for impact. This is adopted from the Eisenhower War Room, I think, like one of those presidents that fought the wars. Maybe it wasn't Eisenhower, but this was actually used in like military conflict to decide like what needs to happen next in a really high stakes situation. And
Mm.
so counterintuitively, the most valuable thing you can do is the easiest thing that you can find as long as it has the highest impact. So the easy, high impact things are the ones you need to do the most. The difficult stuff that's still high impact, you need to do it occasionally, but you need to schedule time for it. You really need to set aside blocks of time where you're going to be able to dive in and do deeper work with this thing that's hard. Whereas the things that are just like easy wins and move the needle, and do them as much as you can. And then the easy stuff that maybe feels good, that fuels the dopamine hit of
Yeah.
crossing things off the to-do list, but they don't actually matter against your key priorities, just do them less. And then for me, this is like deleting email. It feels awesome to delete email, but like, how many hours a day do I need to spend clearing out my inbox versus like picking up the phone one time and calling a potential client, right? It's actually, that's easy. Just picking up the phone is a very easy act. It doesn't take very long. It's high impact, but I avoid it because the easy stuff that's low impact feels better, right? So I do more of that. And then the
Correct.
difficult low impact stuff, like you need to be really kind of brutal in clearing your to-do list here. Like Marie Kondo that list a little bit, just like clear it out and say like the stuff that doesn't matter, that's hard to do, that's complex, like redesigning my website or, writing this crazy thing for Instagram that I'm never going to post. Like just stop doing it. Um, and then to use this model effectively, though, you need to decide what impact means, right? So you need to decide
Okay.
what is the variable I'm actually trying to influence here. Is it, you know, revenue, new opportunities? Is it like well-being and mental health? Is it maximizing my free time so that I can still get my job done, but get out of work, and actually get out and enjoy the weather, right? So what is the thing that matters to you? And then start to use that as your sort of gating factor and decide all the tasks you're doing to align on impacting that variable and that goal, right? Coming back to that James Clear thing, if it's multiple priorities, it's going to be hard to use this. But if you have a thing you've decided matters to you, then you can actually start to clear out your list and be effective in impacting that goal. Procrastination is real. We can't get rid of it. It seems to be a feature, not a bug. And so this is actually a graph of, this is a graph of, I think, like $10,000 invested with compound interest over a 30-year time scale, just to kind of illustrate the cost of waiting to do something. Right. And I show this graph because the things we're avoiding actually have compound interest too. So like the longer we wait to do something, the higher the cost of doing it is. Because if we had done it earlier, we would have not been stressed about it. We would have achieved the results sooner. We wouldn't have been wasting time avoiding it and being anxious. And so there's actually like an interest rate for the things we're avoiding. And it depends on how important that thing is to us. It'll vary. But like you want to pay off your procrastination debt as quickly as you can, because the longer you wait, the higher that graph goes up. And it's not like your return on investment, it's actually a negative valence here, right? So in this example, it's money, but like whatever that thing is you're avoiding is actually accruing negative interest over time, particularly if it's relational, particularly like if it's a hard conversation or something that you've been avoiding with another person, that's building up interest as well. And I like this Zen flow chart. I use this all the time for procrastination or for anxiety in general. Do you have a problem? No? Okay, then don't worry. Do you have a problem? Yes. Can you do something about it? No. All right, don't worry. Can you do something about it? Yes. Okay, don't worry. Right. So it's like really easy to talk yourself out of being upset with this because you can either do something about it or you could choose to not worry about it because it's no longer in your control. And so I often use this to filter out procrastination because I'm worried about something and I'm like, all right, well, I can't worry about it because I can't do anything about it. Or I shouldn't worry about it because I actually could be taking action right now. And this too, if you're scared, do it scared. I have a little sticker on my magnet of like a baby deer kind of running with its legs flailing around, being like, fuck it, do it scared. So that's like for like rock climbing, because I'm terrified of that. My partner loves it. But really, like we got to look at that fear as part of the barrier to entry, and it actually isn't a
Sure.
requirement that we remove fear in order to take action. I think that a lot of people are like feel that way, that they want to get rid of their fear in order to unlock their capability and create momentum. But a lot of times the fear is not going to go away. And if you're just waiting until you don't feel scared, you're likely waiting for a moment that's going to happen after you took the action. Because the way to get
Sure.
confident in doing something is actually doing the things you don't feel confident in. So if you're
Sure. That's
scared,
courage.
right, just do it scared. And
Hmm.
notice is that fear helping you like kind of stay stuck. I've also heard fear, the acronym of false expectations appearing real. And that's a good investigative tool for whether or not that fear is standing in your way or not. So
Excellent.
kind of coming back to those level of motivation, right? Like saying, remembering that the fear is rooted in these like lower order places. And we can kind of short circuit and jump past that when we try to connect to these higher order places of like curiosity, love, and play in what we're trying to do. And so I want to talk finally in the last piece about time management. And then I want to hear a little bit from you and what you think you're going to take forward. I came up with this concept of time confetti where like you it feels
Mhm.
like your day just gets shredded into all these little pieces. And I noticed it comes from your grouping and your transitions where you really try to can gain some stuff here. So planning like with like, planning your meetings, like I have a little autonomy in my schedule, right? So I'm lucky I can do some of this. But like I plan my meetings on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, and Friday, or for deeper focus work or creative work. They're blocked off, not having it, I'll put meetings on there, but I try to schedule things together instead of switching between like a creative project and a client project and back and forth, because that'll actually kind of drain your energy when you're switching gears a lot.
Sure.
And also tracking, like keeping an energy journal, like when's your best focus time throughout the day. So for me, I tend to have a spurt between like 10 and 1. And then I also get another big boost around now, like between 5 and 8, I get like more focused. So I actually plan throughout the day to maximize that energy. And like sometimes in the early morning or the mid afternoon, I might take a nap because I'm like not going to be doing my best work anyway. And I might as well
Mm.
leverage that for later in the day. And also like planning what happens next. When you get on a meeting, like jot down on a little post-it note, what's the thing I'm going to do right after this call? Instead of picking up your phone and scrolling social media or just like wandering into the break room and eating a snack, like make an
Mm.
agreement with yourself about what comes next so you can kind of transition right into that thing and kind of keep your momentum going. And I like the Ohio method, which is like only handle it once. And this is great for things that are really quick. So like if it's something that would take you 5 to 10 seconds to do or take you 5 to 10 seconds to write on your to-do list, just get it done, right? Just like keep those little like things that get in the way, just like running through um your day, and also get them done fully. So like if you're halfway through something and you got to stop to do something else and it's never going to get the second half of it done, just stick with it until it's complete, and then you only handle it once instead of having to schedule a time to come back to it. I've also heard JFDI, which is just
Yeah.
fucking do it. But I like Ohio because it's a little bit, of a classier acronym, if you will.
Sure.
And there's a book on this called Deep Work, where
Mhm.
there's this idea that a 90-minute block is actually ideal for deep creative focused work. And you can combine it with the Pomodoro technique, which is this like 20-minute intervals, 20 minutes on and a 5 minute break. So if you have to do a big thinking process, give yourself a lot of space to do it and try to block off those defensible spaces and have the discipline to honor your agreements with yourself with that. Right. So like noticing when you're off task, I bet you're great at this from your meditation. Like when are you kind of drifting away from the thing you said you'd be doing right now and kind of coming back to that agreement with yourself? And don't let other people interrupt you either. This can be hard for, I coach a lot of leaders on this and like how to get more effective in being like, no, my schedule says I'm not available. And I had one leader tell me like, nobody believes me that I'm in a meeting for 90 minutes. So they keep booking stuff over my 90-minute session because they know it's just a time block. And I was like, then make it like a bunch of 30-minute meetings that are all back to back. And she did that and nobody booked over that slot anymore because they thought she was busy. So like do what you have to do to keep people off your schedule and get that work done. And last piece is around habit fields. So this is an interesting idea that your brain has associations with objects that relate to the behaviors that object kind of brings to mind. And this is why people actually like souvenirs. So like, that I'm looking at
Mm.
some teacups that I got in Japan. And so it's like I drink that teacup every day and it like that object brings to association that trip to Japan, which is a really nice experience, one of my favorite vacations. So you can use the same thing for conditioning behaviors that you want to get better at. And so for you, that meditation cushion is the place where you meditate. So right when you start
Yeah.
to get near it, like I imagine you have the sense of calm, you start to feel more grounded, like it's this distraction-free place. You have a habit field around that meditation cushion. And so it's you want to leverage that like by, for example, not working in bed, right? So like don't sit there with your laptop or work in bed. Or like if you really have a place where you want to do your deep focused work, your reading, your outbound sales calls, your performance that's really maybe your edge. You're learning a new technique in your, in your nursing practice. Like the thing that's going to
Mhm.
help you focus is picking a place to do it over and over again and getting consistent with the surroundings. So that way your brain starts to lock in. Okay, when I'm sitting here and doing this, it's go time. I had
Yep.
a client who started burning cinnamon candles. He really liked the scent of cinnamon. And so he would burn a cinnamon candle when he would sit down to write and do focused work. And then over time, that scent of cinnamon actually started to create this habit field and allow him to focus more effectively just by lighting a candle. So
Nice.
you can do this as long as you're consistent, leverage that sense of like these habit fields and these places where you do deep work or these objects, sensory experiences that you associate with them. And it could be like a light you turn on, it could be a candle, it could be something you place on your desk, a place that you sit. There's lots of ways to do this, but as long as you're consistent over time, you can get good results with it. So again, these are the examples, right? Sit in a certain chair. The key here is consistency. And it
Mm.
might take a little bit of time to prime your brain with it, but you'll eventually get to the place where you just slip into it more naturally. And with you with the meditation thing, I imagine after 160 days, you probably noticed it.
Yeah. I use incense every
Yeah,
time
there you
without
go. So
fail.
the incense
Without
is one of
fail.
those primers, right?
Oh.
And so that's it. I know I kind of like threw a lot of stuff in the mix here, but want to hear your maybe applications or insights, any takeaways from our conversation, which was not really a conversation at all. It was kind of like,
It was great. Looking at what I've written down here. There is a book called Mindset. Um, and of course the author escapes me, but it's indeed, I think the big theme of this is with what you've just gone over as well is making the focus bigger. Um, and that's really helpful. And and also the don't worry, just don't worry diagram um, calmed me down. And if it scares you, do it scared. Um, makes me look at these as I don't know, maybe more celebrations instead of scary things, actually.
yeah,
In terms of how can I actually get better at um, doing what I do want to do around my New Year's resolutions. Um, yeah, I have the same place all set up. Um, I might need to associate some new things with it. Certainly a mindset, moving away from the fear to a love as a higher calling. I mean, when I'm healthier, I can help the world, as it
yeah,
were.
you have a bigger
Um,
mission.
correct. Um, and and also figuring out how to combine that with doing it for enjoyment. Like, uh, man, some of the folks who actually, all of the folks who lead these classes are in that space. They're so excited to work out. They're amazing. Oh my gosh, they couldn't be happier. And you're
Yeah,
like, oh, this sucks. It burns. It's the worst. But we're doing it anyway.
yeah, they're
Um,
having fun.
they're having a lot of fun. And so I look forward to framing it as way more fun.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you reminded me that saved it for the end, kind of the big reveal of what I do instead of New Year's resolutions, right? Because I was trashing them at the beginning. I do a word of the year. And
Mm.
so my word of the year each year functions kind of like an objective instead of a goal. So a resolution is more in the goal thing of like, I'm going to do this or not do this thing. A word of the year tends to like set the tone, and be a thing that I can think about throughout the year and build a relationship with to move me in a certain direction. Last year, my word was discipline. This year, my word is rhythm, right? And so I'm
Mm.
looking for these words that are going to help me move towards the things that I want, but more in like a thematic like tone than like a specific process that I'm trying to follow. But both of them I achieved great results with. Like discipline, I really did find I was able to like hold myself accountable more consistently, and not just to something like a dry January, but like, to
Sure.
really taking the time to finish my work before I go play, or to follow through on a commitment I made to someone. And already with rhythm, I can find myself having like more permission to rest when I need it, more sensing like what's the right thing for this moment instead of maybe the plan that I had for it, and more of this like acceptance of what life is bringing me instead of like being really kind of rigid and fixed on some of the outcomes that I have. So I recommend that as a reframe of a resolution is like what would be a word of your year that you could use to guide you in some of those pursuits as well.
Fantastic.
Cool. I'm going to stop our recording there because I think that's everything I wanted to share, and we can just catch up a little.
Excellent work.